This isn't a new Jetta, but it is the next best thing. For 2025, Volkswagen just pulled the covers off of their moderately refreshed compact sedan in North America. Big news here, we get more tech on the inside and we get refreshed looks inside and outside. Let's dive in. First, obviously, you're going to notice the updated front end styling. If I put this picture side by side with the 2024 model year vehicle, you'll notice that the grille is much smaller, and that's because a lot of the cooling is now rerouted to the egg crate section at the bottom of the bumper. I think this look looks a lot sleeker, and of course it's more harmonious with the rest of the Volkswagen design in the US. In addition to the smaller and slimmer grille there, we also get a light bar in the top end trims. Again, keeping it a bit more current with something like the Volkswagen Tiguan and the Volkswagen Atlas. Other Volkswagens are starting to get this light bar treatment all the way around. Now you should know that the light bar up front is optional, but the light bar in the rear, that's standard. Speaking of the rear end styling, let's again take a look at 2025 versus 2024. You'll notice that not only are the taillight modules a little bit larger, that light bar really accentuates the width of the Jetta, and it really makes it look more modern and certainly sleeker in my opinion. We also get some changes to the lower portion of the bumper to help dress things up a little bit. The big thing you're going to notice is the light bar. Now, speaking of light bars, we don't have the illuminated Volkswagen logo like we find in some of the more expensive Volkswagen SUVs in North America. So nothing like we find in the Volkswagen Atlas with an illuminated logo up front and in the back. These appear to be just a little bit more traditional in that respect. We also get a new trunk lid, so that's probably the only sheet metal change that we find here. They didn't talk about changes to the doors or the roof or the hood, so those appear to be exactly the same as before. But we are going to get new wheels, new 17-inch alloy wheels for the SE trim, new 18-inch alloy wheels for SEL and GLI. And then if you're interested in a black wheel package, you can get that on the SE and the GLI as well. Now, speaking of GLI, it is continuing. Some folks were actually concerned that the Jetta might actually disappear for 2025 because there are a lot of sedans that are actually leaving the market. They're not selling as well as they used to, and some manufacturers are just running away from the segment. But Volkswagen appears to be pretty committed, and we can really see that with the continuation of the Volkswagen GLI. So speaking of the regular Jetta first, we have the same 1.5-liter turbocharged four-cylinder as before, and it's pretty unique in this segment in that it is mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission. If you don't like dual clutches, you want to take a look at something like the Jetta. And interestingly, this is using an Aisin 8-speed automatic transmission. So basically the same 8-speed automatic design that we find in a wide variety of Toyota and Lexus products. So again, if you're worried about a CVT and you'd rather have a traditional automatic, we get it here. The one thing we don't get anymore in the regular Jetta, however, is a 6-speed manual transmission. That actually is fine by me because not very many people were buying the base Jetta with the 6-speed manual. Part of me is a little bit sad about that, but I think most shoppers are actually going to be just fine because the 8-speed automatic was quicker 0 to 60 and it was more efficient in real-world driving versus the manual. If you want a manual, however, Volkswagen still has your back. You can still get that in the GLI that uses the familiar Volkswagen 2-liter turbo, producing 228 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque, and you'll get it with either the 6-speed manual or a 7-speed dual clutch. So you basically have all the bases covered here still. 6-speed manual, dual clutch, traditional automatic, you can get whichever one you want. Now, there are some reasons to get the GLI over the regular Jetta, and basically that's still going to be the rear suspension. We have a torsion beam suspension in the back of the regular Jetta. We have a traditional fully independent multi-link suspension in the GLI. So it's not just that the GLI gets wider tires and grippier tires, etc. We also get a more elegant rear suspension design. The less expensive rear suspension design shouldn't surprise anybody. Remember that the Jetta is on the less expensive side of this segment. It is actually one of the few vehicles you can buy new in the US for 2025, all in, tax, title, license, etc., for under $25,000. Obviously, some of the competition will have a multi-link suspension in the back, but generally they're going to cost a reasonable amount more. And they're not going to have the same level of standard feature content. For 2025, we're going to get things like adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic detection, lane assist, and the emergency assist system standard on every Jetta. Now, that's some of what we find in some of the competition. So, for instance, a Toyota Corolla, it's going to have adaptive cruise control standard, but it's not going to have the blind spot monitoring standard. So we actually find a bit more in terms of the active safety system standard in the Jetta. Now let's take a look at the interior. We get a new interior design, but logically it's based on the outgoing model. The big thing you're going to notice, especially if you were shopping for a lower end trim of Jetta before, is that we now have the larger 8-inch touchscreen in the dashboard standard. And it's running essentially the later version of Volkswagen's infotainment software. They're calling this design a 3-bar dash design, and it definitely is more modern and more feature-rich than the current Jetta, but the screen does come across as a little bit small compared to some of the competition. On the other hand, we get the full LCD instrument cluster standard. Well, actually, it's not full LCD because this is one of those variants where the fuel level and the engine temperature are actually little LED bars on the side, but everything else is the big LCD cluster. And I think I'm actually okay with this trade-off because most people are probably going to be using CarPlay most of the time. The previous generation had a 6.5-inch screen. This is now an 8-inch screen, so it's definitely acceptable for CarPlay use. And that feature is going to be standard CarPlay and Android Auto via a wired USB connection. You can get wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, but you have to step up the trim ladder in order to do that. The other thing that's standard is the dual-zone touch-sensitive climate control system bank. I'm not the biggest fan of touchscreen controls usually, but I appreciate the fact that dual-zone automatic climate control is going to be standard on such an inexpensive vehicle in the US. Now, we don't have the complete pricing lineup just yet, but we know that the base model is going to start at $21,995, and it's probably going to have the same $1,225 destination as 2025. That is more expensive than last year's model. It started at $21,435, but remember, last year it came with a manual, and not very many people chose that absolute base model. So in reality, it's less expensive than last year because most folks were getting the $22,235 automatic transmission equipped model. So it's actually nearly a $300 price drop, and you get the dual zone climate control and the bigger LCD infotainment system as well. We don't have the pricing lineup for the complete array of Jettas just yet, but we know there's going to be a Sport, an SE, an SEL trim, and of course that GLI. If you want features like Sirius XM, the voice controls, you want extra USB-C ports, if you want the wireless charging mat and wireless app connect, then you're going to want the SE trim. That's probably going to be a little bit of a price bump over the outgoing SE model, but I suspect pricing is going to stick relatively close. That's one of the benefits of refreshing continually like this rather than completely redesigning the Jetta is they can really help keep prices low. And that's something that Volkswagen has really been dedicated to lately. It's one of the things I really like about that. The SEL trim, it's basically new wheels, the light bar in the grille, and then of course the new styling. Because feature, content, and functionality-wise, it's actually very similar. This is the one that gets the 10.5-inch LCD cockpit. The other models actually get a slightly smaller LCD instrument cluster, so keep that little twist in mind. S, Sport, and SE get an 8-inch instrument cluster. SEL gets the 10-inch instrument cluster. Basically the same software going on, just bigger screen. While we wait for complete pricing details, especially for the GLI model, let me know what you think of the refresh down there. Should Volkswagen have completely redesigned the Jetta, bearing in mind that such a redesign would probably have increased the price tag by $2,000 to $3,000, perhaps even more? Remember that the Jetta is, again, one of the least expensive ways to get a four-door sedan in North America. It's one of the few vehicles under $25,000 currently, and in this category, it's practically going to be alone. We have the Nissan Versa and the Sentra. A lot of talk about maybe one of those models disappearing for 2025. We know that the Kia Forte is actually gone for 2025. It's being replaced by a different Kia sedan. We don't have pricing on that yet, but again, you can expect it to be more expensive. And then there's the Corolla. The Corolla actually does squeak it in just under the wire, but not for 2025. And then, of course, we have the Honda Civic, which is a reasonable amount more expensive. So let me know what you think about all that down there in the comment section below. Do you think they went in the right direction? Would you have loved to see more changes? Do you think we should have seen a new engine or something along those lines? I have to admit that Volkswagen's 1.5-liter turbo and the 8-speed automatic transmission combo is one of my favorite drivetrains in this segment. It feels very normal. It's very, very fuel efficient. It's also nice and quiet and smooth driving, etc. It's just a very easy to live with combination, and the Jetta's easy to live with because it has such a big back seat and such a big trunk as well. And finally, the look is more modern and more in line with the rest of the lineup. So again, let me know what you think about that down there, and stay tuned because hopefully we'll be driving one soon.